뭐가 될까 대하나 가와이여야부 빛이 어쭈고이네 마리뇨 나에. And I'm going to hand it back to Pete, who is somewhere.
Did you say you wanted to hear the second verse?
에히네 오기마이라 까마떼아으 이때아로하에.
Ka mate ahau I te aroha ea. You know, that feeling of sadness and for your love. And so that brings us on to a great space and place that we've just finished having our kai. And so there's no allowed to be falling asleep, eh? If you want to fall asleep, I'm going to send Mady over. She'll sing loud in your ear.
Neither of you can tell.
Hey, so welcome back after lunch. So we hope you enjoyed your kai and feeling nice and content now, because we've got a couple of people that are going to come up and join us on stage now, and they're covering off on a really, really important part of what this particular weekend is about. You know, we talk about community. Well, they're going to explain a little bit more for us and expand on that. So, Mady, can you invite our guests up, please?
Where's the thing? Oh, there it is. Yeah. Can you please welcome Hamish? Is it? Yes, Hamish and Erica.
And we're super pleased that Hamish is here today to come and join Erica up on stage, because Hamish is one of our people from our local disabled core group, holds a very prestigious position with People First, and is always present in our core groups and keeping us to task. I was just talking to Laura here earlier from Make It Easy, and Hamish enjoys having easy read documents. And as we've discussed, communication is number one. And Hamish is always fantastic at making sure to tell us, hey, easy read, so that I can understand and know what's going on. And so after just acknowledging Hamish and Laura again, we also want to acknowledge our NZSL interpreters. Always wonderful to have them with us. They're great people, as well as doing a wonderful and fantastic job too. So please, homai te paki mō tātou nei NZSL. Thank you.
Kia ora whānau, ko Erica Butters tōku ingoa. My name is Erica, and I am not Sue Hobbs or Delia McKenna, whose name has been on your program. So my sincere apologies for that. And I'm joined by Hamish.
Yeah. Hello, Hamish Tamner. I'm from Palmerston North.
And we're here to talk with you today about safeguarding. So I think it's somewhat of the theme of a lot of what this hui is about, so it's a privilege to be here. I do want to pass on the apologies from Sue and Delia. It was rather last minute that their plans changed and they weren't able to attend. So these are the slides prepared by them, and they will be available for you also. I'm trying the button, but it's not working, so I'll get you to progress. So what we're going to talk about today. Now, they've prepared, the slide stack that they've given me to use has enough material for us to be here chatting for 2 days. And in fact, we've run hui about safeguarding that have taken 2 days. But we've got half an hour, so I might skip through some of the slides and so we have more time for our conversation. But what we'll hopefully cover is what safeguarding means, because it's a word that can be sticky for some people. We're going to talk about the gaps in the current system. We'll introduce to you Te Aore Re Kura, the National Strategy for the Elimination of Family Violence and Sexual Violence. We'll talk about the safeguarding framework, and Hamish has got some background in the development of that. We'll talk about adult abuse and then what the multi-agency response or safeguarding adults from abuse response is. So, first going on to the next slide, what is safeguarding? So if you take maybe a minute at your tables and a few people just share in a 10 or 20 second like elevator pitch. Imagine you're in the elevator, you've got to get from ground zero to the 5th floor. You've got 10 or 20 seconds. What would you say the safeguarding is? So a few people at your tables just share with each other for the next minute. And go.
Narelle's got the roving microphone.
If there's anything that you'd like to share at any time, do you want me to check in with you?
Yeah.
I'll check in and check. Okay, I warned you that it was only going to be quick, so I'm going to call you back. I know that this conversation in korero could probably go on for a long time. But could I ask two tables to just share their elevator pitch? What is safeguarding? 2 tables. Okay, over there, thank you. If you could wait for the microphone, please.
Ako Anne Stap toko ingoa. Safeguarding is 2 words. Safe, when we think about what safe means, we're talking about safe for everyone, you, me and the cat and everyone else. And the second word is guarding, and that implies that we are guardians of something. And so if you put safe and guarding together, safeguarding, 1 word, then we, this beautiful woman here just explained to me that I've just talked about kaitiaki. Is that right? Is that the word I'm looking for? No, Mance and I fall over together often. So that's my whole conceptual framework of how to understand this issue.
Kia ora, thank you. 1 more. Okay, that's fine. We can keep going. We do have 1? Yep.
Kia ora. We had 4 words, and I'm going to call them, they were awareness, participation, protection, prevention. Yep.
Nice. Some of those words may come up again later.
Awareness, participation, prevention, protection.
So this clicker was working and now it's not working again. Oh no, there we go. So you'll now see on the screen the definition that we use. Safeguarding is a range of activities and responses that promote and protect human rights, culture, safety and well-being, and protect people from harm, abuse and neglect. This includes family and sexual violence. So you'll see that it really is a 2-part definition. And often people will only think of the second half, the protection from harm or the elimination of harm. And that is absolutely important. But if that is the sole focus, then sometimes that can be to the detriment of the promotion of rights. And so that is not an effective safeguard. An effective safeguard is a balanced response that promotes rights, well-being and culture, as well as addressing and preventing harm. So, did you have anything else you wanted to add to the safeguarding definition?
good you, if not safe, you make sure you stay home and like that, you can keep safe.
So it's important that everyone
But
feels safe
safe,
in,
yeah.
in their home and
Yeah.
in every environment.
Yeah.
So hopefully this image is something that you may be familiar with, he waka eke noa. So we're all in this together, meaning that safeguarding is everyone's responsibility. But we are currently, we meaning the disability sector, are currently not even really in the waka. I'll give you an example of this, which we'll talk about more shortly. So Te Aurere Kura is the national strategy for the elimination of family violence and sexual violence. It has 6 key shifts and 40 actions. Now, the action that relates to the safeguarding of the disability community is Action 28. Action 28 was the only action out of all 40 that did not have a ministerial home. So what does that mean? It means that when the strategy was launched in December of last year, each of the other actions had a ministry that put up their hand and said, we will be in charge of this and make sure that this happens. But Action 28 did not. Now, that shows that we're not even in the waka. Now, I am very pleased to say that now Action 28 has been adopted and Whaikaha, the Ministry of Disabled People, have put their hand up and they are now going to be overseeing this action. So a little bit more about Te Aurere Kura. It is a 25-year strategy. So that's a long time, and that means that the safeguarding of disabled people is on the agenda for at least the next 25 years, which is good. It sets out a well-being and a strengths-based vision. And the meaning of the name Te Aurere Kura is actually about having a guiding star, something to help us orient and navigate. And so that is the level of importance that it should have for all of us. It is an action plan and a strategy for all of government. So it was published by Te Puna Aonui, who formerly was known as the Joint Venture, which is a collaboration of 10 government agencies that are all working together on this mega issue, which is family violence and sexual violence. And Action 28 is around the safeguarding of disabled people, implementing safeguarding responses, and the way that that action is currently being progressed is that there is a project happening in the Waitemata district area, formerly DHB, where there is collaboration with community agencies there to work together to implement a safeguarding response and to have shared understanding about safeguarding and how that can be progressed. Hamish, would you like to speak about your involvement with that?
In 2014, I was almost the very first person was under People First. I was on the national committee, and People First asked me to go on this committee, and it was in 2014. And now I'm still on this committee, and it's very good. And it was I had good support by Sue Hobbs. She checked on with me before the meeting starts, and like that, and it was going good. Thank you.
Cool. Could we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So, Hamish, why do you think that safeguarding is important?
It is very good. Yes, it's very good. Make sure you keep safe in your own house or out in the community, like that.
And how do you keep yourself safe?
Because if I can communicate with my family and my friends and my support network, and my staff, like that.
Cool. I think you're just giving a brilliant introduction to the safeguarding framework that we're going to introduce soon.
Yes.
What do you think would help people who feel unsafe?
You need a 800 number so people can call. Like if there's a 0800 number like that, and like you just ring that number and it goes to the police station or just go to the network for safeguarding like that.
Okay, I hope that decision makers are taking notes on this suggestion that we have an 0800 number that people can call to
Yes.
feel safe.
Yes.
So Hamish has shared a little bit about the background and his involvement with developing the safeguarding framework. And actually, it is a pleasure being here in Mid-Central speaking about the framework because this is the home of the safeguarding framework.
Yes.
It was developed for implementation here as part of Mana Whai Kaha. And Hamish has been involved since the beginning.
Yes, I have. And if you cannot live your own good life, if you want to feel safe, you can feel safe. Just stay home like that.
So we'll unpack now a little bit more about what the safeguarding framework is. Oh, now it's working too well. Okay, there we go. So the safeguarding framework underpins EGL. So when you think of enabling good lives, you should think of safeguarding because really enabling a good life and safeguarding a good life are the same thing. And so it's really important to frame it that way in your mind. The safeguarding framework is also embedded or has embedded in it other key legislation and frameworks such as the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability and Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And the safeguarding framework introduces us to a spectrum of safeguards, which Hamish started talking about, feeling safe with his family, community,
Yes.
support
Yep,
workers.
yep.
So let's go through it a little bit together. This is the overall view of what the safeguarding framework looks like in image form. It's quite small on the screen, so it may not be easy to discern, so I'll explain it to you. In the centre, there is the person and their culture. Around that is, I'll go to the next slide, the person and their culture. Around that is the things that are of most critical importance. Citizenship and quality of life, decision-making, choice and control, safety and well-being. And all of this is within a human rights context. And we are to promote, enhance and protect those rights. Moving out wider from that, we have our layers or spectrums of the safeguarding framework. So the person is at the core, which means that the first and most important layer of the safeguarding framework is at the person level. The person's ability to safeguard themselves, the person's ability to have awareness about what abuse looks like. And so a really good example of a safeguarding strategy that can be looked at the person level is the People First course, Keeping Safe, Feeling Safe. So that's a course that works at the person level to build their safeguarding capacity for themselves. And it is this level of safeguarding that is the most effective. Moving out from there, well, there's the personal. Moving out from there, we have relationships. Well, this is with your family and whānau. This is your parents, your extended family. These are the people closest to you in your life. And these relationships are in and of themselves an important safeguard. The more of them that you have and the better quality that you have, the more effective the safeguard that they will be. Further up from that next is community. So again, quantity and quality are both important here. Having many connections in your community is a safeguard. And it is not till after that that community and disability services actually even feature. Can you see how far away the services are from the person? So community and disability services are an important safeguard, but they're not the most effective. And the closer that we can work to the person, the better that the person will be safeguarded. And then sitting around all of that is the systems that we're, systems and context. Do you have anything else that you wanted to share, Hamish?
If you feel unsafe, you can call the police or go to the police station. You can tell that support you and your trust, and you can ring the police station or ring a close friend like that. If you're not safe like that, you need to talk to someone like that.
Absolutely. It's really important to have that
Yes.
reaching out and
Yes,
connection and
we do.
those relationships.
Yes.
And it's good that we have so many police in the room. So the other component of the safeguarding framework, as well as that spectrum, is these 3 areas of focus, which is being aware, being heard, and being responsive. So if you think about each of those layers, and then think of each of these 3 areas within those layers, we need to be aware, heard, and responsive at the person level, at the personal relationships level, whānau, community, disability services, systems level. Every level needs to be aware, heard, and responsive. Something to keep in mind with safeguarding, and we mentioned it earlier, is about the need to ensure that rights are promoted and protected at all times. And that may mean that safeguarding can enable some risks. Safeguarding may enable making poor choices or making mistakes, because we're all humans, and that is the way that we are programmed to learn, is through experience. There does need to be discretion and judgment from those that are supporting a safeguarding response about ensuring that severe harm is not enabled through a safeguarding response. And that will always be a judgment call. It will always be situational and discretionary. It will always be sitting in that grey area. The next slide has got a whole bunch of instruments of law, domestically and internationally, that support this framework. I'm not going to read them all out, and it is in quite small text, but I'll make sure that these slides are available to you. But it's things like Te Tere Atua Wātangi, different conventions from the United Nations, and the New Zealand Disability Strategy, Enabling Good Lives Principles, etc.
Yeah.
I want to introduce to you a phrase. It's a tongue twister phrase, so apologies if I get my tongue twisted, but a twin track response. So what does a twin track response mean? So this is a phrase that is used in the disability strategy, and it's, yeah, okay. What does a twin track response mean? It's up there. The answer is given. But it's something that is in the disability strategy, and it's also in Te Aurere Kura. It is making sure that mainstream services are accessible to everyone, and it's also ensuring that, so that's the first track, and the second track is ensuring that there are specialist services available when needed. That's what the 2 tracks are. That's a twin track approach. So this is the approach that is advocated for by the Human Rights Commission and Te Puna Awanui and by the Disability Strategy. So this slide just goes through those tracks, the first track being mainstream, being accessible, the second track being specialist services, and then thirdly there lists that both of them need to have a Te Tiriti o Wātangi informed lens. So tangata and whānau whaikaha Māori identify what safeguarding means for them and how this is within the safeguarding framework. So it's really important that if you think back to that image of the safeguarding framework, the person was at the centre with their culture. And so that determines what safeguarding looks like for them. And so this is really important to drive the entire safeguarding response for tangata whaikaha and whānau Māori. We'll just have a little bit of a chat about these words: vulnerable, vulnerability, and vulnerable adults. So in the conversation of safeguarding, these are the words that will very often be used. And in the Crimes Amendment Act, we are introduced to the term in legislation of a vulnerable adult. The Crimes Amendment Act makes it an offence to fail to protect a vulnerable adult, very similar to the way that it's an offence to fail to protect a child. However, these words don't sit comfortably. I want to just share with you something that I think is very eloquently written, and it actually came from Australia, from their Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse and Care. But it's about these terms. And they say many disability advocates prefer not to use the word vulnerable to describe people with disability because it implies a deficit on the part of people with disability. Advocates argue that people with disability are not inherently vulnerable, but may experience circumstances placing them at a greater risk of harm. So, if we don't use these words, what do we use? So, we generally refer to people being at risk. The way that the Australian Royal Commission expands on this further, it says, when describing people with disability whose circumstances make them more likely than other people with disability to experience violence, abuse, neglect, or exploitation, we use the term at risk. We use the term vulnerable only when quoting directly from other sources. And so that's the approach that I will take today also, that I'll only be using the term vulnerable when quoting from, for example, the Crimes Amendment Act, which uses the term vulnerable adult. Otherwise, we'll talk about adults at risk. So, who is an adult at risk? So there's a three-part definition here, and this is taken and expanded upon from the Crimes Amendment Act. So an adult at risk is an adult who has care and or support needs, regardless of whether they're currently accessing services to support those needs. So that's the first part. And they are at risk of or they are experiencing harm, abuse, or neglect. That's the second part. And thirdly, because of their care and support needs, they're unable to remove themselves from the harm, abuse, or neglect, or the risk of it. And all three parts of that definition have to be actively in play for a person to be considered an adult at risk. So a person that just has care and support needs, they are not an adult at risk. A person that is experiencing harm or abuse but doesn't have care and support needs and is able to remove themselves, they're also not an adult at risk. So all three parts of that definition have to be in play. Which leads to an important conclusion that not all disabled people are adults at risk. Okay? And just a note, I'm aware that these flowers are photos from Debbie Hager's garden. If anyone knows Debbie Hager, she drafted the report for the Human Rights Commission on safeguarding and on abuse of disabilities. So, lovely photo. Okay. So, we'll talk quickly about abuse. So, abuse can be anything that causes harm. And this could be physical, emotional, or sexual violence. It could be bullying, include harassment. It can include neglect. And something that is often challenging in this space is thinking about self-neglect and the degree to which that becomes a harm that needs to be addressed. It includes controlling behaviours, and including from institutions, isolating people, financial abuse, or any kind of discrimination. Did you have anything you wanted to share?
Like if you talk to your friends or talk to your staff, if the abuse in the homes, and you need to talk to your managers like that, and if you or can talk to a close friend about the abuse or intellect like that.
You sound like somebody that's done the Keeping Safe, Feeling Safe course.
Yes, yes. And People First got some booklets like that, People First has.
Yeah.
And it's very good. Keep them safe, feeling safe. And it was very good. I did it, and it was very good.
You're a good...
Expand on the program for those that don't know, please, Erica.
Sure. So the question was, can I expand on the program? So Keeping Safe, Feeling Safe is a course that is facilitated by People First.
Yes.
People First are the disabled persons organisation for learning disability in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And Keeping Safe, Feeling Safe is a 10-part course.
Yes.
So 10 sessions.
Yes.
It's normally one a week.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
And we used to have face-to-face, but since we got this COVID, it's done by Zoom. And each week for 10 sessions, you go through this book, and it's very good.
And so, as I mentioned earlier when I first referenced it, it is one of the most effective tools that I am aware of to build safeguarding capacity
Yes.
at that person level.
Top to south of People First, they did this project, and now it's launched out for everywhere in New Zealand, like that, and it's very good.
It is very good. So, what is safeguarding adults from abuse? What does it mean when those words are used together and they're capitalised? So, safeguarding adults from abuse, or if we use the acronym SAFA, refers to a specific response. So if we think about safeguarding as a continuum where there's prevention and promotion of rights, but there's also responding when there has been harm, SAFA is the response when there has been harm. It's the specialist response. It is that second track of the twin track approach. So safeguarding adults from abuse is a multi-agency response. So we know that often disabled people and adults at risk have many agencies or professionals that are in their lives, but they don't talk to each other. They have friends and whānau in their life, but they don't talk to each other. And when there has been harm, one of the most significant factors that can continue that harm is when people don't talk to each other. So the SAFA response brings together all of the people that are involved or should be involved to work together in a connected and collaborative way to improving the safety and well-being for that person. And it keeps the person at the centre and in direction and control of the process. So that is what safeguarding adults from abuse is. It is not a process or approach that is owned by anyone. It is what it is. That being said, this is the approach that is being trialled as part of the response for Action 28 in Waitemata, and it's also one of the work streams that the organisation that I work for offers, and I'll talk about our organisation a little bit more later. So now I'm going to pivot a little bit to the other end of the spectrum of that continuum of safeguarding. So what is supported decision-making? So supported decision-making is supporting a person to keep and exercise their own capacity and right to direct their own life. It's ensuring that they have appropriate supports to enable them to do that. And the United Nations teaches us that everyone has the right to make decisions, everyone has the right to access support to make decisions, and also everyone has the right to experience the consequences of their decisions. So supported decision-making is about doing what needs to be done to make sure that happens. Did you want to share anything about supported decision-making?
If you are not safe, you make sure you keep safe at home and don't go out. If you worry about things, you make sure you keep safe at home, like that, and other places too in the community.
Yeah, ideally we will be working towards a world where you can feel safe outside of your home, and we can move freely. So supported decision-making is something that everybody uses all the time. I consult Google frequently, I consult my doctor frequently, I consult my husband frequently about different decisions that I may need to make. And everyone does this. Yes. So people that may have cognitive impairments or learning disability or traumatic brain injuries, people that have are neurodiverse or have experience of mental illness, these are all people that may at some time require support for decision making in what might be viewed by others as a more formal support. Doesn't have to be formal, but it can be. And this is part of the safeguarding framework and the safeguarding response. I'm just looking at the time, and I would like to gauge from the room now, because the way that the rest of the afternoon is structured is that we've got a table conversation to happen and then feeding back. And so we've got, like I said, they prepared a lot of slides, and so there's still more to go through here, but I'm mindful of time. Would you like me to pause now and we can go to a table conversation about how each of you in your roles would respond to a specific safeguarding scenario? Or would you like to spend a little bit more time going through some of the content and have a briefer table conversation? What would you like? Just, you can use your thumb, up or down or middle. So up means keep going with the slides. Down means let's stop and have a table conversation now, please. Let me know. And the middle's like, don't mind, yeah. So it's quite a mixed room. You haven't made it easy. So let's compromise. Let's do a little bit more of the slide stack, and then we'll stop.
Yep.
Okay, so we're definitely not going to get through all the slide stack. We'll do a little bit more.
Well facilitated.
Yeah.
So the supported decision-making steps are something that's really important for everybody to understand, because if it can be broken down into steps, then it makes it manageable and achievable. And in fact, IHC Advocacy did a research program with disabled people and asked them what helps you make your decisions. And one of the reoccurrent answers in that research was breaking it down. Break the decision down. So we're going to break it down. So what are some of the steps? You need to describe the decision. You have to know what it is that you need to make a decision about. You need to access easy to understand information. This has been discussed throughout today, including the brief on Easy Read. You need to then explore options. And the one thing I'd say here is that exploring options should really be as experiential as possible. It should involve the senses. Okay, so exploring options does not just mean reading about it or listening about it. It means tasting it, seeing it, smelling it, being in the space. Make it as experiential as possible. You consider the consequences and the pros and the cons. And it's not till 5 steps down they actually make the decision. And making the decision is separate from acting on the decision, which is a separate thing. And then last, but probably most important, is to review and evaluate that decision.
Yep.
So, look, here we go. Case study discussion. We got there. So, well, this is me not being as familiar with the slide stack as I should be because I didn't prepare it. So thank you. So I am Hamish and I. Is this okay, Hamish?
Yes.
If you can bring around a piece of paper for each table.
Yes.
Hang on. It's there's 2 pieces of paper for each table.
Okay.
On this piece of paper, it's got a scenario, and it's pretty grim. So, forewarned that please self-care if you recognise anything in yourself that is uncomfortable with reading about or hearing about the situation, which does involve family violence, then please it's more than okay to step out. Okay, I just want to make sure that that's well known and understood. So as this comes around, if you can have somebody at your table read it so that everybody is able to participate in the conversation, and then there's a few questions to go through. So these questions, they are on the slide, but they're quite small. In essence, it's about going through the safeguarding framework key domains. So, yes. Thank you, Hamish. So how can we be aware? So what are the steps that you could do right now with the hat that you wear? What could you do to be aware? What could you do to make sure that the appropriate people are heard? And then what could you do to be responsive? Okay, so we've got about 20 minutes to go through this. So 20 minutes is a decent amount of time. You should be able to get to some nitty-gritty, and then we will have some feeding back from the tables, okay? Now, this is, I believe, an anonymized case study that is drawing upon real-life experience. This is something that Sue Hobbs has drafted up for you to review. So, does anyone have any questions? Hamish and I will float around and support you as needed at your tables, okay? But otherwise, go.